Welcome to Light Novel Sound, where we bring stories to life. Get ready for an epic journey through Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, a story filled with action, mystery, and mind-blowing twists. A huge thank you to Sing-Shong for crafting this incredible story. If you enjoy this audiobook, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, sit back, relax, and let's begin. Chapter 61, Episode 13, War of Kings, 3. The constellation Lady of the Brocade Sleep is waiting for your response. I shrugged towards the confident Minute Jiwon and replied, I don't want to. Minute Jiwon's eyes shook violently. Some of the men opened their mouths and even the actor Minute Jiwon couldn't control her face. She spoke in a dumbfounded voice. Hey! Rather than accepting the given reality, she chose to doubt her hearing. I think I heard wrong, can you tell me again? I don't want to be your underling. It was laughable to become her subordinate for only 2,000 coins. I spoke to my party members waiting behind me. Let's go. We have to hurry. We turned around without hesitation and Minute Jiwon shouted in an urgent voice. Wait a minute. I can give more coins if it is lacking. I can talk to my sponsor. There is no need. I said to wait. She ran urgently and blocked my way. It was a rather quick movement compared to her agility level. Don't you know the value of 2,000 coins? Didn't she know? I could easily get a few bursts of 2,000 coins. Minute Jiwon spoke with narrowed eyes. Can you afford to pretend like this? Pretending? The war between the three kingdoms will soon begin. I don't know who your sponsor is, but the small and medium groups in the area will be cleaned up. Honestly, it isn't enough that you didn't accept the 2,000 coins. But is it possible that you haven't figured it out yet? I am the king of Silla. The king who will soon unify the three kingdoms. She seemed to lose sight of reality as she became immersed in her acting. Well, Minute Jiwon was originally like this. She was an excellent actress and due to her deep sympathy with Queen Jinseong, she would live thinking that she really was the last queen of Silla. This was why method acting was scary. It seems you are mistaken about something. This isn't the age of the later three kingdoms. You are the one who is mistaken about the era. The Republic of South Korea is over. Are you still waiting for rescue? She suddenly started speaking bullshit. A new era has opened. The beginning of this era will start with me, Minute Jiwon. I was mistaken. This type of nonsense sounded plausible when placed in this context. I was worried about how to separate from this woman when Yosanga handled it for me. Q Queen Nim. What? As far as I know, Silla is the weakest country in the later three kingdoms. Won't it be hard based on the history? The one who unified the three kingdoms. Minute Jiwon paled from the surprise attack. What do you know? I have a first-grade degree in Korean history. 1-1 ST grade Korean history, the embarrassed Minute Jiwon stuttered. What is so great about first-grade Korean history? Let's go Yosanga-sai. She doesn't know history very well. Minute Jiwon's words became redder at my words. Just wait. My proposal isn't over yet. How about 3,000 coins? I turned around without saying anything. 3,500 coins. I'll give you 3,500. It was only increased by 500. Now I knew the scale of the Queen's capital. As expected, the constellations had different levels of wealth according to their popularity. I ignored her and kept walking. 3,600, no 3,700. My footsteps stopped. I looked back and saw Minute Jiwon making a that's right expression. I was also a bad guy. I could just walk away but I wanted to smash it. I opened my mouth and spoke in a blunt voice. Rather, I want to make you an offer. What do you mean? 10,000, how about it? 10,000. Oh, is it too low? You are a king, then I will make it 20,000. Minute Jiwon's expression hardened. She glared at me. Are you joking with me right now? 20,000 coins? I don't think you are worth that much. No, I mean that I will buy you for 20,000 coins. Here. To be exact, you and all your troops. Her mouth dropped open in a daze before she barely regained her senses. Why you don't have that many coins? I wonder what you will say when I show you this. I pressed my index finger and thumb together. Then at the end of my index finger, the part of my coins showed up. 20,000 coins. Minute Jiwon's barely maintained poker face finally collapsed. This is ridiculous. Do you believe me now? It didn't take long for distrust to turn to astonishment, astonishment to turn into greed. It was natural. 20,000 coins was a truly huge amount. It was an amount that could affect the dominance of the three forces in the later three kingdoms. Unfortunately, greed couldn't break her pride. Are you trying to buy me with money? Why? Is it impossible? You are the one who made the proposal first. The leader of her subordinates came forward. You dare! He had a slender body and was very handsome. He didn't seem to have much muscles, but they were hidden. Yo-sanga said, Dr. Sai, this man. I realized it the moment Yo-sanga spoke. Yes, Silla had this constellation. Silla wasn't at an absolutely disadvantage in the war between the three kingdoms. Looking at the era, there were quite a few competent people. For example, Kim Yushin. The problem was that there was no Kim Yushin in the current Silla period. Guanchang is a good constellation. But he is rash. What if my constellation was Gaibak? I don't think you want to reproduce the Battle of Huangshanbiol. Gaibak equals General from Beach. Link. Battle of Huangzhanbiol link. The confused man's eyes widened. Are you from Beach? The constellation Warang knows no retreat is angry at your comments. Warang equals elite youth core of Silla. This person truly was his sponsor. Warang knows no retreat, Guanchang. His stigma wasn't that great, but his loyalty to the fallen kingdom was wonderful. I'm not from Beach. I'm an ordinary South Korean person. This guy. I respect your patriotism, but you should be more prudent. I don't have only 20,000 coins. I moved my fingers one more time and the number of coins started to rise. The man's face started turning pale. Wealth was an object of desire for the poor. However, overwhelming wealth caused reverence and fear. Especially for those who were familiar with the power of coins. Minute Jiwon, who had been frozen for a while, belatedly opened her mouth. Who are you? She asked me too soon. I naturally had no intention of answering. Minute Jiwon-sai, you can't solve everything in the world with money. I thought you would know this since you are an actor. I'm disappointed. I finally turned around and started leaving. The party members followed me as I heard Minute Jiwon's voice. W8. However, she couldn't follow me anymore. Once we got a certain distance away from the Silla group, Yo-sanga spoke in a slightly grouchy voice. Dr. Sai, can I ask you something? Yes. Is she a famous person? I hesitated for a moment at the unexpected question. Here? Maybe. I see. Dr. Sai and Sungkook Sai recognizes her. I used to watch a lot of historical dramas, why don't I remember her at all? This was why she was grumpy? Lee Gil-young interrupted. Nuna, I also don't know her. I'm glad. It wasn't a strange story. It was natural for Yo-sanga and Lee Gil-young not to know Minute Jiwon, if she only appeared in a novel. The problem was Lee Sungkook. Lee Sungkook-sai. Yes. Lee Sungkook responded from the rear of the group. Minute Jiwon's beauty seemed quite impressive. I heard that you are a fan of Minute Jiwon? Here? That's correct. Don't you know? She is a famous actress, eh? Lee Sungkook's expression became strange. Minute Jiwon, Sai? Eh? Why do I know Minute Jiwon? No, did I know her from the beginning? I quietly activated character list. The exclusive skill, Character list is activated. Character information. Name, Lee Sung-kook. Age, 25 years old. Constellation support, manager of the old ticker. Private attribute, hypnotist, rare. Exclusive skills, hypnosis LV3, bluff LV4, weapons training LV3, detect attributes LV2. Stigma, comfortable sleep LV1. Overall stats, physique LV13, strength LV13, agility LV17, magic power LV18. Overall evaluation, the current comprehensive evaluation is currently in progress. It was the second time I saw Lee Sung-kook's information. Nothing had greatly changed, except for one thing. Lee Sung-kook's 9th to get off attribute had disappeared. Lee Sung-kook-sai? Yes. No, it is nothing. I stopped speaking in order to prevent confusion. In the world of ways of survival, an attribute only disappeared when the qualifications for that attribute weren't met anymore. All those who got off knew the future of this world. However, the future that Lee Sung-kook knew was only near the prologue. The evolution of the current scenario surpassed the information he knew. Then a hypothesis emerged. Maybe all those who got off would become simple characters the moment they caught up with the future they knew? It was still a leap, but it was a possible hypothesis. If this was the case, it was understandable that Lee Sung-kook and Jung Min-sob's information started to be seen. If it was like this, maybe one day I would also? The character Minute Jiwon shows a weak liking towards you. All my thoughts collapsed at this absurd message. I reflexively looked back. Minute Jiwon was still standing still and looking this way. I couldn't see her face, but her gestures looked angry. Then this message. No, wait a minute. Why did I forget that episode? It suddenly came to mind. On the 11th regression, she had slapped Yo Jong-hyuk as soon as he met her. Then Minute Jiwon supported him throughout that regression. I suddenly had an ominous feeling. Perhaps it couldn't be? At least I wasn't hit on the cheek. An hour later, we moved through the forest of buildings near Gwanghwamun as quickly as possible. I didn't see any humans, but it was clear that the kings who bought my text were hiding near here. Pay attention to when they start to move. We will also move in time with them, I said to my party members while moving cautiously. In any case, I knew the king's goals. The moment he reached the entrance of the National Palace Museum, his heart started pounding. Most of the artifacts sleeping here were garbage. Only one of them was real. The 4-yin demonic beheading sword. The strongest SSSSS grade item was hidden here in Gwanghwamun. I wrote it, but my hands and feet curled up just reading the words. It was true that the 4-yin demonic beheading sword was at the National Palace Museum. Of course, the rating of the item wasn't SSSSS. In the first place, there was no such rating. The 4-yin demonic beheading sword boasted a great performance, and in fact, Yo Jong-hyuk of the 3rd regression also favored this sword at the beginning. Hyung, if there is such an item, shouldn't we get it first? There is no need. 4-yin demonic beheading sword was a good sword, but it wasn't a necessary item right now. However, the plagiarist and other kings would think differently. They could get the best combat power at the beginning with the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. They would surely be looking for the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. My plan was simple. Take the other artifacts while they were aiming for the sword. The problem was, when would those guys move? There was no need to worry about it in advance. In this damn world, those guys always appeared when the scenario was stagnant. This is really surprising. All the key people are gathered. It was as I expected. There were sparks and an intermediate dokibi appeared out of thin air. Shouldn't good children be awarded a prize? There was the sound of something started to rise from the center of Gwanghwamun. It was a single throne covered with a golden light. There were gasps everywhere in Gwanghwamun. There wasn't an explanation yet, but all the kings would have realized it at this moment. Only a single king could take that throne. The main scenario has been updated. Main scenario number 4, the king's qualifications has begun. Chapter 62, War of Kings, 4. Lee Sung-kook was surprised by the system message and muttered, "Another new scenario." It certainly wasn't good timing. Another scenario appeared before we could complete the clear conditions of the existing scenario. I opened up the new scenario as soon as it arrived. Main scenario number 4, the King's Qualifications. Category, Main. Difficulty, A. Clear conditions. Occupy the absolute throne, located at Gwanghwamun. Time limit, 8 hours. Compensation, 10,000 coins. Failure. This scenario can only be challenged by those who have completed the hidden scenario King's Road. The Absolute King has absolute commands over all the other kings. There are additional special clear conditions for this scenario. The situation wasn't good. Our group hadn't been able to take the target of the struggle for flags yet. The burden had doubled. I must complete the scenario related to the throne while taking down the Tyrant King and occupying Changsin Station. The intermediate Dokibi said. Look at your confused faces. Please don't worry too much. This scenario will proceed slowly. Gwanghwamun was still despite everyone being in a state of agitation. It was natural. The surviving kings knew how important it was to listen to the Dokibi. As you have guessed, the fourth main scenario is to be the only king to sit on the throne. Of course, being a king doesn't mean that everyone can sit on that throne. Only a person who has proved his or her qualifications can sit there. The intermediate Dokibi said with a bad laugh. Then I will reveal the first qualification. King's Qualification. 1. The owner of the throne should be braver than anyone else. The absolute throne never wants a weak king. To challenge the throne, you must own at least a black flag. Additional qualifications will be released after a while. A black flag. It was disgusting from the very beginning. Who? The motive WA given. Now make a fun story. The intermediate Dokibi disappeared and Yosanga made an anxious expression. If it is a black flag, you need to occupy 20 stations. That's right. Our group had a brown flag. It was a flag that could be obtained after occupying 10 stations. What do we do? In order to create a black flag, we need 10 more stations. If there are vacant stations nearby. This is a condition that appeared because there are no empty stations. Hey! As far as I knew, no king had achieved the black flag at this point. Did you forget? There isn't only one method to change the color of a flag. The achievement value of the flag went up when taking over a station. However, there was a way to get achievement values much faster. Ah! It was to take the flag of another representative. Right now, there were a bunch of kings with flags in Gwanghwamun. I calmed down the party members. Don't worry. This wasn't unexpected. We will proceed as planned. As planned. I said this, but it wouldn't be easy. There were clouds of war hanging over Gwanghwamun. It was a breathless tension just before the storm blew. The sound of weapons being pulled out and the organization of battle lines could be heard. People would soon start moving. Those competing for a promotion would now kill each other with real swords. Those who wanted a wider territory would take each other's flags to occupy more stations. Kill each other and get better items. It was in order to survive. Lee Sung-kook watched the buildings around them and muttered in a surreal tone. It is scary. Is this really South Korea? It is South Korea. It is still South Korea. Representative Nim, aren't you scared? I'm afraid. It wasn't a lie. I was obviously scared. To be honest, I often felt that way. Even if I read Ways of Survival, I was still a regular office worker. I didn't express it, but I often wondered if I could survive. Of course, my worries didn't last long. It was because it was useless to think about it. It was the same in any world. Kim Dokja, who worked at Minyosoft, was now Kim Dokja, who lived in the world of Ways of Survival. Death would come whether I wanted it to or not. The most important thing was, at least I feel like I am living right now. The exclusive skill, Fourth Wall, is activated. I suddenly turned around and saw Lee Sung-kuk looking at me with reverent eyes. When I look at Representative Nim. Attack! Someone's shout was heard before Lee Sung-kuk's words were over. 300 meters away, there was a king who started marching north. He was a king with a brown flag like me. I couldn't see his face because he was too far away, but he was probably the king of a small district. At almost the same time, the warlords hiding in Gwanghwamun started to appear. They were each armed with excellent self-defense equipment. The most prominent one was a man wearing a kilt in splendid colors. I could tell who he was without looking. Our target, the Tyrant King and the rule of Dobong-jiu and Seongbuk-jiu. The vibe he gave off was new. The Tyrant King who had the largest forces among Seoul's 7 kings. Now that he moved, the first apostle and the kings of the 3 kingdoms would act. Maybe most of them will go after the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. In fact, the direction of the king's march was the Northern Palace Museum where the 4-yin demonic beheading sword was located. I didn't see him, but the plagiarist would also be moving to that side. Some forces ignored any damage and were running towards the museum. It was understandable. Since the qualifications of the absolute king wasn't clear yet, they thought it would be more advantageous to obtain a good item. If the item was the 4-yin demonic beheading sword, they could fill in the lacking achievement points of their flag at once. Lee Sung-kuk asked anxiously, "Shouldn't we go? The 4-yin demonic beheading sword is a pretty good item. We will just be defeated if we go." We didn't have a lot of people. Moreover, there were many high-level sponsors among them. Go to the west. I moved while leading the party. All the kings were heading for the Northern Palace Museum, so the west was relatively lacking. It was the historic Gwanghwamun, so there were museums all over the place. Presium, Korean Financial History Museum, Korean National Police Heritage Museum. Yo Sanga asked, "We aren't going to these places. We should avoid the modern and contemporary exhibits. An old relic was better." Of course, the relic simply being old wasn't enough. The hoe used by farmers in the Iron Age was also such an item, but it was only F grade. The important thing was that it have a relationship with a famous person or a narrative. Let's go here. The place we stopped at was the Seoul History Museum facing Gyeonghui Palace. A light flashed in Yosangra's eyes. "What are we looking for here?" "We must find the Ganpyeongui. It is a relic of the Joseon dynasty that resembles a disc, but I don't know what floor it is on." Ganpyeongui is an astronomical observation device. Image will be provided below. Okay, I will try and find it. We have to find it quickly, so let's scatter. Gil Young, you move with Sanganuna. And Lee Sung-kuk. As I was speaking, something sharp flew from behind me. I reflexively crouched down, pulling the party members with me. The exterior wall of the building was pierced by an arrow. There was a trace of magic power on the shaft. I got goosebumps. Strong magic arrow. This person had learnt the archery skill properly. Who was it? The unexpected ambush complicated my thoughts. Was there someone who read the movements of my party? Everybody go inside. Quickly. Several more arrows flew. Blade of Faith is activated. I swung my sword and struck the flying arrows. Fortunately, the amount of magic power wasn't high, so they weren't difficult to block. The problem was the number. One arrow flew out and pierced my thigh. I quickly retreated and hid behind cover. Ha ha ha! Where is the novice king wandering to? A voice echoed through the area. A group of men armed with bows and swords appeared 500 meters away. Their flag couldn't be seen. In other words, they sent out a detached force. Some kings were smarter than I thought. Was he going to eat up items while taking away the flags of the smaller kings? The exclusive skill, Character List, is activated. I used a skill on a person in the lead. Character information. Name, Chu Wangin. Age, 33 years old. Constellation support, the last hero of Hwangsanbil. Private attribute, minor actor, general. Exclusive skills, weapons training LV4, acting LV1, weak investigation LV1. Stigma, beach kendo LV4, prepared to fight to the death for the country LV2, detached force management LV3. Overall stats, physique LV19, strength LV19, agility LV21, magic power LV15. Overall evaluation, it is a case where even a nobody can grow if he meets an excellent sponsor. Due to the high degree of sympathy with the sponsor, the strength of his stigmas is significant. Damn, a tiger had come. I didn't expect to meet Hwangsenbeel's master here. Those with actor attributes tended to cling to these types of constellations. If you know honor as a king, surrender your flag. Then your group members won't lose their lives. The poor dramatic tone told me why he was only a minor actor. The last hero of Hwangsenbeel was attached to such a person. It seemed that bad luck with partners applied even to constellations. But this was difficult. The level of the stigmas beach kendo and detached force management was too high. Considering the number of people, it would be hard to handle all of them without raising my overall stats. Coins possessed, 68 150C. Should I use my coins here? However, the difficulty of the last phase of the fourth scenario would increase sharply if I used coins to raise my overall stats here. It would disturb my whole plan. If I closed my eyes and used around 20,000 coins. Isn't it embarrassing for you to persecute the king of a weak nation using the name of the three kingdoms? I looked around as I heard a voice and saw a familiar person approaching. The incarnation of Gaibak, Chu Wangin made a fierce expression. What is the queen doing here? Your crude tone is just as expected for the master of a ruined kingdom. The woman shot back with a smug expression. King of Beauty Minute Jiwon. Why did this woman appear here? Surely she hadn't followed me? No. There was no way. Minute Jiwon's eyes glanced at me. The character Minute Jiwon shows a weak liking towards you. Really? Shut up. The cowardly Scylla blood now claims to be rule of the three kingdoms? I won't recognize a girl like you as a king. Chu Wangin's roar of anger burst from his body. He might be a minor actor without much skills, but his voice was very loud. By the way, it was interesting. Gaibak and Queen Jinseong were born in different eras, but they could face each other like this after becoming constellations. I asked Minute Jiwon, why are you helping me? Scylla doesn't ignore weak countries. It is Scylla who destroyed Gaia. Did you also have a first-grade degree in Korean history? Any high school graduate would know this much. Minute Jiwon's expression became slightly gloomy. I don't know because I didn't go to high school. It was natural. Minute Jiwon had been an actor since her teens. She became an actress at an early age and learned things other than history. Your words are correct. I can't obtain people with money. I'm repaying the debt caused by my rudeness. That's it. I knew Minute Jiwon's history as an actress and could feel the sincerity in her words. It was still surprising. She was an incarnation with a high pride, so I didn't think she would bow before me like this. Gaibak's incarnation laughed at our conversation. A king is swayed by personal matters? That's why a chick like you. Minute Jiwon's captain came forward on behalf of the Warang. Rude. How can a man like you be the king of a country? Gaibak's eyes were drawn to the Warang. Warang? Very interesting. Did you sign with that constellation? The Warang captain turned red at the words. It reminded me that the Warang captain's sponsor was Guanchang. Do you want your neck to be cut like your sponsor? In the Battle of Hwangsenbeel, Guanchang died from Gaibak cutting his throat. Shut up. Thank you for coming to help, but the relationship between constellations was the worst. This was particularly bad due to their high level of sympathy. There was a hierarchy among the constellations due to the history of their lives. A person couldn't go against their king, and the enemy was determined according to historical records. For example, Karushima Mishifusa of Japan could never beat the Duke of Loyalty and Warfare. It was just like how Guanchang couldn't win against Gaibak. Minute Jiwon also knew this and didn't look happy. I spoke first. Just defeat the army. or we can't win. Beech's army had slightly more military force. Gaibak was a military commander. The more people he led, the stronger his power. Guanchang was no match for him. Then Yo Sanga's voice was heard. Dr. Sai. I've found it. I looked back and found Yo Sanga running with a small disc. She found it already? The Ganpiangui. The relic resembling a wall clock glowed in Yo Sanga's hands. At this moment, I had an idea. I looked at Ganpiangui, then Minute Jiwen and the incarnation of Guanchang. Then I made a decision. Perhaps I could win this without using coins? Attack! The character Chu Wangin has used the Stigma Detached Force LV3. The Warang kept falling under the hands of the Beech forces. Minute Jiwen looked towards me with a desperate expression and I said, I think we can win. Hey! We will recreate the Battle of Huangzhenbiao. Many people knew this, but Huangzhenbiao was a battle that Silla won. TL, I will give a short summary, since this information is important to understand what is going on. Battle of Huangzhenbiao was a major battle that took place between Beech and Silla. The commander of Beech was Gaibak and the commander of Silla was Kim Yushin. The Silla army was 50,000 strong while Beech could only rally up 5,000 people, but Gaibak rallied his forces with a heroic speech. The Beech forces won several skirmishes and the Silla forces lost morale. Then a general sent out his son, Kim Guanchang, to single-handedly fight the enemy. Guanchang was captured before being released by Gaibak. After returning to the Silla camp, Guanchang once again charged to the enemy. Gaibak captured him again and executed him this time. Thanks to Guanchang's martyrdom, the Silla forces regained morale and Kim Yushin was victorious. Gaibak died in battle. Chapter 63, War of Kings, 5. Minute Jiwen was surprised by my words. Battle of Huangzhenbiao. Yes, Silla originally won the Battle of Huangzhenbiao. This is according to history. Chu Wangin's sword ran through a Warang member. Obviously, Silla would win if it was like history. If it was like history. But before I could speak, the captain of Warang came forward and shouted, "Don't retreat. There is no stepping back in a battle." At the same time, the Warang pulled out their weapons. No! Victory! Loyally serve the king. Serve! This bastard? All of the Warang of Silla are subjected to the effect of Mundane World 5 Commandments LV2. Ha, you are pushing them. Gaibak's incarnation, Chu Wangin cried out. Huarang's captain came running towards him with a spear. He was following his dam sponsor. The character Chu Wangin has used the Stigma Beech Kendo LV3. Kiik! The body of the Warang captain flew through the air after being hit by a big sword. I shouted towards Minute Jiwen. Tell them to set up the formations. Take your formations. Hurry! Character Minute Jiwen has activated Military Command LV2. The army has lost their sense of reason. The skill activation is cancelled. Set up the formation. Minute Jiwen screamed again, but the Warang were already inspired by Mundane World 5 Commandments and didn't listen to her order. In the first place, they were loyal to the beauty of Queen Jinseong, not her charisma. I heard a sound. Then Li Gilyang landed next to me from where he broke through the window of the museum's second floor. Hyung, should I call Titano? Li Gilyang's eyes shone as he prepared to use diverse communication. No, it is okay. It would be helpful if Li Gilyang could call the 6th grade insect king like last time, but then he would be unconscious for 2 days. High-grade monsters were difficult to control and could also sweep away allies. In any case, Li Gilyang was my hidden card. I had to save him until the beginning of the war with the kings. Kuak! The Warang in front of us were knocked out. On the other hand, there wasn't a single dead Beech person. I reached out to Yo Sanga, who ran to me. Yo Sanga Sai, the relic. Yo Sanga handed me the Ganpiangui. The Ganpiangui. Everyone was distracted by the 4-yin demonic beheading sword, but in fact, the Ganpiangui was an essential item for the 4th scenario. The 4-yin demonic beheading sword had no meaning if this item didn't exist. Kuhyuk! The captain of Hwarang was a wreck as he was hit by Chu Wangin again. It wouldn't be strange if he died in one more blow. The constellation Hwarang knows no retreat is in a hurry. The constellation Last Hero of Hwangzhenbeil is happy. The constellation Lady of the Brocade Sleep is irritated. The momentum of the Beach army grew while Scylla's morale broke down. It felt like the spirit of Gaibak was flowing from Chu Wangin's body. Destroy the damn Scylla! The more that the constellations were in a situation similar to the history that they lived, the greater the coordination with their incarnation and the stronger the power of the stigma. In addition, the encounter with related constellations. It was time for the stage to be created. What? People screamed with surprise. Sparks filled the surrounding space and the scene changed. Seoul's Gwanghwamun was transformed into a rugged mountain wilderness. Stage transformation. It was a phenomenon that occurred when the coordination was high between incarnations with historical correlations. Space transformation summoned the space-time that the constellations had fought in. Of course, the space wasn't really changed. It was close to an augmented reality. The problem was that this wasn't the case for the people who summoned the stage. Ha 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 ha! I missed you, Hwangzhenbeil! Chu Wangin achieved a considerable level of coordination with his sponsor and shouted. Now he seemed to completely believe he was Gaibak. Gaibak was in a hurry. If a constellation did something like this in the early scenarios, it was likely they would receive a sanction from the Bureau. However, Gaibak was less likely to be affected than the low-level constellations. You are. The frightened Hwarang started to step back. Lee Sung-kuk muttered, he isn't one of the 7 kings but he has such power, does this make sense? It is possible because Gaibak is the protagonist of this stage. Chu Wangin was like a mad monster as he ran around. Once stage transformation occurred and coordination with the sponsor increased, the incarnation's strength would multiply. I looked at the trembling Minute Jiwen and opened my mouth. I have 2 ways. One is to let the incarnation of Guanchang die. What do you mean? Originally, the Battle of Hwangzhenbeil was a battlefield that Schiller won thanks to Guanchang's sacrifice. One half of the battle was complete if he died. As soon as stage transformation began, this has become the battlefield of history. If the incarnation of Guanchang dies, the morale of the Scylla troops will rise due to their anger. This is recorded in history. I didn't listen to Minute Jiwen's answer. The second way is to change history. I looked down at the Ganpiangui in my hands. Ganpiangui, an astronomical observation device produced by Joseon in the 17th century. Minute Jiwen felt uneasy and asked, what will happen if it fails? Your country will perish. Then of course it will be the first option. This was truly Queen Jinseong. She was considered an incompetent ruler for a reason. I didn't mean to give you a choice. I will do the second method. Then why did you mention it? I gave you a chance. You are not what Scylla needs right now. I manipulated the 2 discs that made up the Ganpiangui. The 2 discs were called the Sky Disc and the Earth Disc respectively. The top was the Earth Disc and the bottom was the Sky Disc. There was a simple definition for Ganpiangui in ways of survival. The Ganpiangui is an item that can find the constellations in heaven. As I slowly turned the Earth Disc, the constellations engraved on the Sky Disc started to burn brightly. Ganpiangui's special option Echo of the Stars has been activated. Echo of the Stars allows you to ask for the help of a constellation. The constellation can refuse your request and the number of times Ganpiangui can be used is reduced when the constellation responds to the request. There were 7 constellations left on the Sky Disc. In other words, I can use it 7 more times in the future. It would have been good if there were more constellations left on the relic. Well, it couldn't be helped. Lee Sung-kuk seemed to have noticed something and asked, are you going to get help from a constellation with that? Not all the constellations are available, but there are some great people. Lee Sung-kuk was filled with admiration at my answer. He belatedly found out the true value of this item. That's it! Lee Sung-kook cried out excitedly, how about calling Seong-yu or Lu Biu? If you call them, you can easily deal with Guy-buk. I have to know the modifier of the constellation. In the world of ways of survival, the modifier was like the constellation's space-time coordinates. The modifiers were like the X and Y axis coordinate system in the star stream. Ah, then. Lee Sung-kook made a sad expression. He thought that I didn't know the modifiers of Lu Biu and Seong-yu. But that was an illusion. There was no one in the world who knew as many constellation modifiers as me. I'll call a constellation. The great constellations hear your voice flowing through the stars. Of course, the constellation I was calling wasn't Lu Biu or Seong-yu. There was no guarantee they would respond to this request, and there was someone more fitting for this battlefield. I stared at the stars in the sky. I faced the numerous stars and opened my mouth. I want to call Hwarang leader King Hyungmu the Great. The star navigation has begun. A part of the sky darkened and a shadow fell to the ground. The battle between Scylla and Beach stopped. What nonsense are you saying? Chu Wangin sensed something suspicious and started running towards me. Representative Nim, we will stop them. Lee Sung-kook pulled out a sword. I didn't know how long the hypnotist would be able to endure, but I should have some time. After a while, one of the stars in the sky shone brightly. He finally appeared. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great is looking at you. General. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great is listening to you. There are people here who need your help. I am calling you because your people are dying. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great is silent at your words. King Hyungmu the Great. He wasn't royalty, but he was the only person who was given a posthumous name of a king of Silla. He probably wouldn't reject my request. It was because Hwangsanbeil was his battlefield. But something unexpected happened. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great doesn't want to be involved in the history of modern life. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great will reject your offer. What? The constellation was about to fade away when Yosanga interrupted. General, please listen to my words. The smart Yosanga noticed who King Hyungmu the Great was. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great is looking back. I'm well aware of General's story. The Battle of Hwangsanbeil, the Siege of Pyongyang. I've read all about it in the records. Yosanga took a deep breath before starting to talk. I understand that you want to respect the past and history. But General, some histories don't end after they are recorded. Yosanga's voice was clear and straightforward. Don't you regret it? The battlefield where the young Hwarang are sacrificed and countless people are buried. Have you already forgotten? The constellation King Hyungmu the Great is listening to Incarnation Yosanga's story. History won't change. The soldiers on the field won't be comforted and the lives of the young Hwarang won't return. But General, the history here hasn't ended yet. If you come here, at least you can change the history in this place. I had forgotten how good a talker Yosanga was. During her early days, she was the queen of PT at Minyosoft. General, your battle of Hwangsanbeil is over, but we are still at Hwangsanbeil. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great has silently closed his eyes. There were such moments in life. I knew what would happen from now on, even if no one said anything. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great has responded to your request. One of the constellations on Ganpyeongwi disappeared and a light from the star in the sky shone on me. I smiled at the nervous Yosanga. Well done, Yosanga-sai. You have temporarily received the protection of constellation King Hyungmu the Great. The muscles in my body twitched like they were surprised. My heart pumped and light and darkness crossed several times in my head. Something was being constructed inside me. This is just an old man's reminiscence of the past. This was the mantra of the constellation. Just listening made my existence at stake. Please, lend me your voice for a while. I nodded while opening my eyes. Everyone on the field of Hwangsanbeil was looking at me. The incarnation of Gaibak, Chu Wangin, was astonished. That person? The spirit of a constellation was felt despite him not descending directly. This was the size of the existences called constellations. It has been a while, Gaibak. There was a strange depth in my voice. In the distance, the incarnation of Guanchang staggered. Warang Guanchang, there is no need to pay respect to me. Ji General. King Humu the Great was watching the world through me. He looked at Guanchang, Gaibak and the broken soul. I was also watching the world through King Humu the Great. The sunlight covered the plains of Huangsan. It is funny. Why is it that all of you have gathered here again? Chu Wangin laughed madly at these words. It was a laugh filled with deep-seated resentment. At this moment, he really was Gaibak. Don't you know? It was to meet you again on this field. The character Chu Wangin has used the Stigma Beach Kendo LV4. Chu Wangin's sword filled with power and moved. Originally, it was an attack that I wouldn't have been able to avoid or block. But I avoided the attack without much difficulty. Gaibak, why are you doing this to your incarnation? Have you forgotten the constraints of plausibility? You will destroy your incarnation. It was as he said. Gaibak was acting unreasonably. I also wondered this as a reader of Ways of Survival. Kim Yushin, you must have heard nothing about this world. What do you mean? It doesn't matter. My wish was achieved the moment I met you. I'll have no regrets even if I die now. The incarnation of Gaibak cried out. I carry on Beach's legacy of Baiyo, Gaibak of Hwangsanbeil. I will settle my lifelong regret here. King Humu the Great watched Gaibak's incarnation with sad eyes and opened his mouth through me. I am the 15th captain of Warang, Kim Yushin. King Humu the Great, Warang leader Kim Yushin. I will comfort the soul of the unfortunate constellation and correct the history of modern humans. The man who led the Battle of Hwangsanbeil to victory sent me his will. I moved my right hand. A bluish glow grew from the hilt. The sword of the Warang leader is now on the battlefield. The power of the star relic Blue Dragon Sword is temporarily stored in unbroken faith. The blade of the Blue Dragon Sword soared high into the sky of Huangsan. All of Huangsan seemed to scream. Enormous magic power escaped and a large crack appeared in the earth, centered around me. Dragonflower Tree Unit, come to this place right now. The stigma gather the Warang is activated. Something was happening in the crack. The forgotten ghosts buried in the eternal history. There were no names left, but they were Warang who once lived on this land and who fought only for honor. Ku'u! The Dragonflower Tree, Kim Yushin's elite unit showed up from the pages of history. Chapter 64, Master of the Throne, 1. Kim Yushin's stigma gather the Warang was a skill that called the elite Warang that died in history, the Dragonflower Tree. To put it simple, it was a ground version of the Ghost Fleet that Li Jihai used. It wasn't comparable to the Duke of Loyalty and Warfare's power, but it was still a great stigma used by a constellation. Go! The buried bones were removed and the Dragonflower Tree unit rose to fight with Beach's army. Some Warang had no eyes while others had no arms or legs. It was cruel. They would raise their blades as long as Kim Yushin was here. This was despite their souls being worn down, their anger erased and even their hearts gone. They were soldiers who fought to prevent the fall of their kingdom. Now they were fighting for a fallen kingdom. You are still a coward, Kim Yushin. Now you are even pushing your dead men. Come on. Let's have a one-on-one fight. I was still at Gaibak's provocation. It was because Kim Yushin didn't want to move. He would crush Gaibak with the overwhelming force of the Dragonflower Tree. The magic power that emerged from his sword mercilessly filled the air. Kim Yushin! The shout filled the air and even the emotionlessly Dragonflower Tree hesitated for a moment. This was Gaibak. The last master of Beach, Gaibak. Gaibak was a constellation that overwhelmed Kim Yushin just in terms of physical buff abilities. In fact, Guy Bak never fought one-on-one against Kim Yushin in the Battle of Hwangsanbeil. To be exact, it's right to say that Kim Yushin avoided the confrontation. The character Chu Wangin has used the stigma prepared to fight to the death for the country LV2. In history, Guy Bak's army fought against Kim Yushin's army that outnumbered them by several times and won a few impossible battles. The last winner might be Kim Yushin, but Guy Bak wasn't defeated until the final battle of Hwangsanbeil was held. He united his soldiers with patriotism and his shouts were close to insane. I carried Kim Yushin behind me right now, but if things were different, I might have called Guy Bak. Guanchang's incarnation shouted, "General! Don't move!" Kim Yushin spoke through my mouth. My expression was unchanged despite looking at the dying dragonflower tree members. Kim Yushin's serene image was conveyed. Guy Bak shouted, "Your cowardice hasn't changed despite you becoming a constellation." That's right. Kim Yushin was a coward. He was afraid of death and afraid of defeat. That's why he was strong. His emotions were unshakable and he didn't commit rash acts. Defeat the enemies in a way that achieved victory. That's how he won the final battle of Hwangsanbeil, despite being defeated 4 previous times. Kuak! The hundreds of dragonflower tree members clashed fiercely with Guy Bak. His incarnation was so severely hurt that he could no longer survive. His whole body was bloody while there were fatal wounds on his arms, thighs, and sides. However, Guy Bak kept moving through the crowd of dragonflower tree members towards me. Kim Yushin. The stigma request for reinforcements has been activated. Ghost soldiers appeared like shadows from behind Kim Yushin and sprang towards Guy Bak. Based on the different articles of clothing on the soldiers, they might not be Silla troops. Perhaps they were the Tang dynasty troops called to destroy Goguryeo. As expected from Kim Yushin. The only thing important to him was winning. Using foreign forces wasn't an important issue for him. Numerous spears pierced his chest. Guy Bak's incarnation couldn't overcome the pain and fell to his knees. Kuheok! The incarnation of the strong Guy Bak was now at his limit. Guy Bak laughed. "I am resentful. I can't touch you even on this fake stage. I wanted to exchange swords with you just once." Guy Bak's red eyes made me feel confused. Guanchang was alive, history had changed. But this was one part that didn't change. Kim Yushin asked, "Guy Bak, why did you do this? If you die in this state, you can't choose another incarnation for a while. Why did you suddenly abandon the scenario?" Guy Bak had a distant look on his face and then he gave a meaningful smile. Kim Yushin waited before pulling out a blade. I hurriedly took back control of my voice. "He can't be killed with my hands." "Why?" "There are restrictions. The king of no killing meant I couldn't carry out direct slaughter. As soon as I killed one person, I would lose my throne." Kim Yushin nodded like he understood. "I see. I roughly understand. Don't worry. The stars will honor your commitment. But it is I, Kim Yushin, who will deal with Guy Bak, not you." "But there is a lingering attachment, please understand." Kim Yushin gestured and one of the dragonflower tree members nodded. I handed over my voice to Kim Yushin. "Guy Bak, let's meet in the next world." Guy Bak's incarnation looked up at us silently. He wanted to say something but he couldn't open his mouth. At the last moment, his face looked like a minor actor who completed his scenes rather than Guy Bak. Then the incarnation's head quietly flew through the air. "Stage transformation has ended. You have experienced the Battle of Hwangsanbeil. 1,000 coins have been earned as experience compensation." I looked around and saw that all of Beech's army was wiped out. The authority of King of No Killing is retained due to the indirect nature of the killing. It was fortunate. King of No Killing was only lost when I killed someone directly with my own hands. The life that the dragonflower tree member took wasn't recognized as me killing someone. "Representative Nim, are you okay?" Lee Sungkirk's voice was heard from behind me. Yo Sanga sighed with relief while Lee Gil-young was disgruntled that he couldn't do much. Then Minute Jiwan asked, What the hell was that? She looked like she had completely lost her soul. I shrugged and said, you should study history if you want to be a king. I might have called Kim Yushin, but I didn't belong to Silla or Beach. I called Kim Yushin because he was the most appropriate one to deal with Guy Buck. Anyway, I was glad that the result was better than expected. I was able to thoroughly check the performance of the Ganpiangui, and I could get some coins and items from the Beach members. You have earned 5,400 coins. Coins possessed, 74,950 C. Now I wasn't afraid of the final phase of the fourth scenario. It is time to go to the north. The remaining duration of the call is 3 minutes. Kim Yushin's divine blessing still remained. I should take advantage of the remaining time left on the Ganpiangui. It could only be used 7 times, so I couldn't waste it. Rise up, Dragonflower Tree. The broken fragments of the Dragonflower Tree unit rose again, and I pointed north with my sword. Advance! The consumption of magic power was huge, so the operation time of the Dragonflower Tree unit was short. The Dragonflower Tree unit started to march north, randomly sweeping away the small and medium groups. It might be possible to wipe out all the forces of the other kings gathered at the National Palace Museum. There were screams as forces fought all over the street. What are these skeletons? Ugh! The incarnations that ran towards me were crushed by the Dragonflower Tree unit. Since I wasn't the one attacking, I didn't get a penalty for killing. Yes, this was an invigorating taste. Kim Yushin's holy voice was heard in my head. There is something strange about you. Your mind is intact despite hearing my true voice. I have a strong mentality. I was a bit surprised by the words. The constellations used the indirect messages to communicate for a reason. Kim Yushin was just a low-ranking constellation, but most people would pee their pants or faint hearing his holy voice. In fact, I was a bit worried about that too. Remember, you owe me a big debt. In order to help you, I had to embrace more possibilities than necessary. There was something sinister about his tone. I quickly expressed my appreciation. I am thankful. I won't forget General's help. You are a hasty friend. You don't have anyone to pass it on to yet? Won't it happen one day? If I give birth to a child, I will surely tell them what happened today. Rather, you don't seem to have a sponsor. I had an ominous feeling. Damn, this old fox kept talking. I like you. If you don't mind, I would like to become your sponsor in this world. His words were nice, but it merely meant to be his slave. That will be a problem. Why? Isn't my strength enough? You can become the strongest of this age with just my stigma. The Gather the Warang stigma was good. But that was when applied to Kim Yushin's saga. The strongest in this era? He was trying to scam me. The words were ridiculous for someone who wasn't a fable level. If the great sage, the equal of heaven, heard it, he would have squeezed Kim Yushin's head tightly. Now isn't the age of the 3 kingdoms. You are old and should take a break. We had fun together, but let's not see each other again. The constellation prisoner of the golden headband is laughing at King Hyunmoo the Great. 300 coins have been sponsored. Kim Yushin was silent for a moment, perhaps because his pride was pricked. I thought he would back off, but a sharp pain suddenly shot through my head. Have you forgotten that my divine blessing still remains? Currently, Kim Yushin and I were connected through the Ganpiangui. The muscles of my body spasmed in an unusual manner. No matter what, wasn't he a great person of Korea? No, maybe he could do this because he was a great person of Korea. Damn it. It would be better to think again. Yo Sanga looked at me with worry. Dr. Sai? Yo Sanga Sai. Get away from me. Quickly. My trembling right hand didn't listen as it raised unbroken faith and started pointing it at Yosanga. Kim Yushin started to exert control over my body. Did you say there was a restriction on your actions? I wonder what the restriction is. What if I kill that woman right now? Kim Yushin, this is your will. It isn't my karma. Who? I don't know. What if I disengage the moment I stab the blade? Won't it be recognized as your actions? And this woman seems to be quite precious to you. Stop. Make a promise. In the next sponsor selection, you will choose Kim Yushin. The intent of this old fox was obvious. The second sponsor selection would begin the moment the fourth scenario was over. Kim Yushin wanted to use this pledge as an opportunity to acquire me. If I hadn't read Ways of Survival, it might not be a bad choice. Kim Yushin was a fairly decent constellation, and there were a few scenarios in the middle that could be cleared with Gather the Warang alone. However, if I was going to pick a sponsor, I would have picked the Great Sage, the equal of heaven, in the beginning. Why should I choose Kim Yushin now? I said no. In addition, I had the contract with Bi-hyung that didn't allow me to choose a sponsor. Kim Yushin's voice hardened. You are a stubborn young man. But it is the wrong choice. How long can you endure? The blade in my hand started moving towards Yo-sanga. Yo-sanga-sai, quickly. Why didn't the smart Yo-sanga move? I looked at my right hand moving against my will and finally made a decision. Damn it, I respected him as a great person, but he forced me to do this. I took a deep breath. This was my body. I would never give it to this guy or any constellation. The exclusive skill, Fourth Wall, is activated. Chapter 65, Master of the Throne, 2. The pages of Ways of Destruction flashed in my head. A light streamed through my head and the strings of light started to line up. They were the text of Ways of Survival. Hyuk? Kim Yushin discovered something was wrong and his presence became noticeably thinner. The old fox noticed quickly. The echo of the constellation connected through echo of the stars has disappeared. At the last moment, Kim Yushin's astounded voice was heard. What are you? Then Kim Yushin was gone. I was surprised as well. I expected it to be possible with Fourth Wall, but I didn't think the Ganpyeongwi connection to the constellation could be broken so easily. The encounter in the theater dungeon was a hint. The Fourth Wall had destroyed the theater master the moment he tried to look inside my head. I was hoping the same thing would happen to the constellation, but Kim Yushin noticed quickly and ran away. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great has doubts about your existence. The constellation King Hyungmu the Great will be watching you closely in the future. In any case, I was still being followed by the old geezer. Are you okay? Yes. I'm fine. But what was this? I looked up and found that my limbs were tied up with magic power. It was a chrysalis-like appearance. Yo-sanga's face was completely red. That? I couldn't run away, but I couldn't let you attack me. I roughly understood what was going on. She used binding thread on me during that short interval. I thought she was frozen with surprise, but she was actually using a skill. Your improvisation is amazing. I'm sorry. It is a compliment. If I start acting strange in the future, act like you did now. I will release you. Yo-sanga looked embarrassed, but I was serious. It was my mistake when I thought of her as an ordinary office worker. I looked back and saw Minute Juan looking between me and Yo-sanga with curious eyes. Well, it turned out like this. I came to help only to end up being helped. I nodded. We will be enemies the next time we meet. Why don't you join us now? It is a common proceeding in dramas. This isn't a drama. My friend. Make friends with faith. It is the banner of our warang. Minute Juan said with a smile before moving away. Could she be a good king? I don't know. Perhaps even the King of Beauty didn't know. We will go as well. Lee Sung-keuk-sai. Come on. Lee Sung-keuk emerged from behind the building with Lee Gil-young. This bastard, when did he hide in such a place? I took my companions and started to move north. The place that Kim Yushin's Gather the Warang swept through was devastated. The armed forces of the small kings were lying all over the place. This was the dignity of a proper constellation. Kim Yushin was a cowardly but useful constellation. I picked up 3 flags and built up my achievements. Your brown flag has absorbed the cumulative achievements of the brown flag. Your brown flag has evolved into a purple flag. You are able to use the perks of the purple flag. Indeed, the best thing was to grow without a fight. I looked around and saw that most flags had already been collected. From the purple flag onwards, the achievement values of the flag wouldn't rise well. In other words, it was useless to grab a small king from now on. Jung Minsob Sai, are you there? The next moment, Jung Minsob appeared out of thin air. The recluse's cloak that I handed him in advance was covering his body. Jung Minsob's mission was to scout the National Palace Museum. How many have gone inside so far? A total of 9 kings have entered, including the Tyrant King and True Reader. 9. It was a reasonable number. What are the flag types? There are 7 purple and 2 brown flags. In particular, there are 2 with a really deep purple color. I guess they are the Tyrant and True Reader. That's right. Jung Minsob, wasn't his talent quite useful? I open my mouth. This time, I will only go with Yo Sangasai and Gilyung. Both of you wait outside. Stay hidden using the cloak. Will it be okay? Yes, I only need 3 people right now. I will enter if you call us. I appreciated the thought, but it would just be a disruption. It was because the current Seoul Palace Museum was a dungeon. A new hidden scenario has arrived. Hidden scenario, artifact trials. Category, hidden. Difficulty, F~A+. Clear conditions, clear the right artifact dungeon with the proper personnel. Time limit, none. Compensation, 500-5,000 coins. Failure, death. A white marble lobby appeared before us as we entered the museum. There were no signs of anyone else in the lobby. Yo Sanga spoke in a soft voice. I can't like culture now without feeling scared. There was the previous theater and now this museum. Hyung, are we going to get the legendary sword? No, not right now. Of course, I could find the 4-yin demonic beheading sword in this dungeon. That's why I sowed the information. Please select the type of dungeon you want to enter. Single-player dungeon, Nagak, large seashell played as a horn in Korean traditional music. 3-person dungeon, Acupuncture Copper Man. 5-person dungeon, Dongui Bogum, Korean book compiled by a royal physician, considered as one of the classics of Oriental medicine. 7-person dungeon, Dragon Jar. However, the dungeon with the 4-yin demonic beheading sword couldn't be entered in a normal manner. It was because the dungeon was only accessible using the Sangpyeong Tongbo coin, which was given as a reward when clearing a dungeon. I will choose the 3-person dungeon, the Acupuncture Copper Man. You have entered the 3-person dungeon. Lee Gilyung looked a bit disappointed. He had been expecting to get a great artifact. Gilyung. An artifact isn't about the outward appearance. Hey! There are many impressive-looking things that have no substance. The 4-yin demonic beheading sword was one such item. Rather, the good things in this dungeon could be obtained from the commonplace dungeons. An example was the skill that could be obtained the Acupuncture Copper Man dungeon. Yo Sanga was amazed and surprised as soon as we entered the dungeon. There are other people besides us. Intermittent screams could be heard from the dungeon. Uwak! Go away! It was a monster in human form with a matte color. The 3-person dungeon was filled with these copper people. It was the 7th grade species, the Acupuncture Copper Man. After a certain amount of time, these guys would self-proliferate unless the method to attack them was known. The Acupuncture Copper Man didn't suffer because they had a strong body, no internal organs and no neural networks. Aya! Save me! Some of the incarnation's swords cut at copper men, but they didn't receive much damage. Rather, they pulled the incarnation's bodies down. The body of a man in his 50s was torn to pieces in the hands of the copper men. Dr. Sai, how do we deal with these guys? They don't receive damage at all. Yo Sanga and Lee Gilyung aimed their weapons or skills at the incoming copper men, but there was hardly any effect. Sometimes Lee Gilyung's blunt attack would damage them, but he didn't have any idea of what he did. Look at their bodies. The monsters that appeared in the artifacts trials were based on relics kept in Seoul Palace Museum. For example, the monsters in the one-player dungeon was literally a musical instrument made of a seashell, and as for the Dongui Bogum 5-person dungeon, there was no need to explain anything. It was the same for the acupuncture copper man in the 3-person dungeon. Yo Sanga stared closely at a copper man and opened her mouth. Is there something etched on the body? That's right. In fact, the acupuncture copper man was a relic that displayed 354 acupuncture points on the human body, including the front, back, arms, legs and head. It was an artifact used to study acupuncture in the Joseon dynasty. Blade of Faith is activated. I stabbed one of the acupuncture points on the copper man. Then I twisted it and the body scattered into powder. It was a meaningless end for a 7th-grade reproduction species. You have hunted the first acupuncture copper man. If you look closely, the color for each acupuncture point was subtly different. Some are devoid of blood and some are deadly. Some of the points, there is a different effect every time an acupuncture point is hit. Ah! The important thing was to find the acupuncture point that didn't break the flow. I demonstrated a few times and Lee Gil-young and Yo Sanga got the knack for it very quickly. Lee Gil-young used diverse communication to shock the points with small insects, while Yo Sanga applied binding thread. I honestly admired what I saw. These two people, they really had excellent growth. Your party is the first to hunt 100 acupuncture copper men. You have cleared the 3-person dungeon. 4 Sangpyeong Tongbo coins are obtained as a basic reward. The exclusive skill Hit a Pressure Point has been acquired. I got the skill I aimed for. Hit a Pressure Point. It was a unique technique to use the pressure points to subdue the enemy. It was an essential skill for me to maintain the king of no killing. Yo Sanga looked at the Sangpyeong Tongbo coins curiously and muttered, "Can we buy something with this?" It can be exchanged for coins or a dungeon ticket. Then, of course, we will use it for the dungeon admission ticket. Now we have 3 of them. Let's obtain 10 of them. 10? Wait a minute, Dr. Sai? We will enter the hidden dungeon where we can get the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. Yo Sanga asked with surprise. But didn't you say we wouldn't get the 4-yin demonic beheading sword? We aren't going after the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. We were going to hunt the kings.